Hello, hello. Welcome to Get Good with Git. We've got an exciting workshop and a lot of content to cover. I will do my best to get through all of it in an hour, but there are always past streams that you can go ahead and check out to see if other folks have finished it up or you want another perspective. These recordings can always be found on YouTube. One moment, actually, I forgot a thing. Sorry about that. I forgot water and a jacket because I was cold. Having a bit of a busy morning, but okay, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So excited to talk to you about getting good with Git. If you haven't met me before, my name is Cecilia. I'm a coach here at Major League Hacking. I actually use she, they pronouns that changed recently. And I really, really love reading. So if you're joining me for a Today in Global Hack Week in the future, I always love book recs. I'm always putting more recommendations into my Goodreads. So that way, when I'm looking for books at my library, and if I see a title someone's recommended, I'll go check those out and get a chance to talk with them about the book that they recommended me. So that's a fun little way to engage with me, particularly if you see me in person. You can be like, I recommended you that book. Did you get a chance to read it? Yeah. But a few notes before we get started. Like I said, we'll be getting good with Git. So that means we'll talk a little bit about GitHub, giving you access to the GitHub Student Developer Pack, learn about the version control systems that make it possible for to be the developers that we are today. And then we'll actually go through Git. And so something I always do in my workshops is that I will walk you through using the terminal, make it easier to use it, reduce that fear that you might have of integration with the terminal. Because there are many extensions and they're wonderful. But I do think it's important that folks are able to get down to the bare minimum, the skeleton, if you will, and be comfortable using those in case they just, they're not getting what they want out of their extension, that they actually have full control of what they're doing. And then we'll do a walkthrough of using them in conjunction with a sample project. So this might be really useful for a future hackathon project, particularly if you need to roll back any changes. I will always tell you with great responsibility, or with great power comes great responsibility, because with Git, you have the power to control time. So getting into Git and GitHub. You might hear one or the other today, or even just in general. You might have heard people saying like, oh, I'm using GitHub, oh, I'm using Git. And you might not know what that means or what it's associated with. So we're going to be describing the differences. And I do want to make sure that folks have a chance to check in. So go ahead and go to that link if you haven't already. Get your check-in points or your check-in for your live event so you can work toward bonus swag. And we'll keep going. So GitHub is a platform, much like Google Drive or Office 365. These are all cloud platforms that we leverage to store things in them. And what we're storing is our projects. But GitHub also works in that you have the tool beneath it that allows you to work with it. Yes, you can manually upload files like you would any other cloud platform that you're storing things in, but Git gives you just a bit more control that you can do it from anywhere. So terminal, Visual Studio Code extensions, etc. And of course, as long as you have internet, you can access GitHub. Now, Git is a version control system. So in Google Drive, you'll probably see this as going through your history. I think Office 365 also has this, but version control for those is very limited to when they have auto-saved for you or when someone has started making an update. And so it's like caching at fairly consistent times, but for you, it may not look so. For Git, we are in charge of the caching. We are in charge of what things change and when we choose to save them. So I've described this a number of different ways, but the most popular one right now that people tend to resonate with is think about a video game when you are saving. Not not new, but like the retro games, or like when you like hit exit and you're like, yes, save before I exit, that kind of stuff. That you're in charge of it and there is no autosave. Git is a lot like that. There is no autosave, period. But we are in charge of when we want to save. So I've talked about it like, let's say you are, the room before a boss battle, you're like making sure you've got all your stuff. But you're only allowed to save 2 of your 3 types of inventory. Maybe you're allowed to save your health items, your money, and your weaponry as separate saves, as separate things. But you're only allowed to save 2 of those 3. And so every time you hit save, you're like, yes, I want to save my gear and my health items. I don't care about money because I already have everything I need. And your choice might be different, of course. But the point is, you are choosing what you're saving before you enter that boss room, each and every time, right? And there are many, many other ways that people can describe it. And I encourage you to think of ways that you might describe it to family or to friends, because that'll help it lock in what it actually means to you. Okay, so like I said, our goal is to master Git in an hour. I'm going to give you enough to kind of feel out what these trainings will be like, or at least give you the terminology that when you are reading the training manual or the cheat sheet, that you're familiar with what you're seeing. So you're welcome to take a screenshot or watch this recording later, hit pause, and go to these links on your own after the fact, saying like, hey, yeah, like I want to explore more. I want to see what else I can do. These links will help you out. But why should you use GitHub? Why wouldn't you use Google Drive or a zip drive or your email or, a notepad or you're like just your laptop? Like you're only ever developing on your laptop, so why would you need it elsewhere? Well, there are multiple reasons, some of them very personal, being that you can collaborate with other people through GitHub, and having to upload files of code and then manually find your changes all the time can be very exhausting. So Git in connection with GitHub will allow you to skip over that part. And that's the thing that makes it very easy. Versus if you do have a laptop, maybe you want to access your GitHub on a school computer because your laptop, you left it at home that day or something. Or maybe, you invest in a desktop, or you get another laptop and you don't have an easy way of transferring all your files quickly. You might save everything in GitHub, so that way you can pull it onto your laptop, the new one, or your desktop, or whatever it is. And that way you can have, multiple avenues of development. But there is a lot more that GitHub has to offer, such as GitHub Copilot. As you collaborate with people, you can make pull requests, which can say like, hey, I'd like to suggest this change to this repository. Can it be reviewed? And so that's that code review. And can it be accepted into this repository? So you'll see a lot of folks as we get into like the October timeframe of where people are trying to do open source contributions. And this is what GitHub also enables. And there are many, many, many other wonderful features that GitHub offers, and that's just a small selection. But the ones that I want to really highlight to you are going to be, you might have GitHub issues where you can report bugs, GitHub skills where you might want to go and learn how to use certain aspects of Git, like GitHub Actions, especially if you're doing like automations and deployments, CI/CD kind of stuff, or continuous integration and continuous development kind of things. But also GitHub Education, which is the thing I love most. I really, really love the GitHub Student Developer Pack. It is a chance for you to access, quite literally a mountain and growing, a mountain of professional developer tools for free. The Student Pack is changing every year. They are always collecting recommendations for who else they should partner with. And the goal is to give students access to things like free domains, cloud credit for a year, or maybe like a specific amount that's only given to you in that school year. Maybe it's that you want to try out different online courses before you actually commit to a subscription with a specific online course platform. And so you might go, oh, I really like this platform. I like all the things, but maybe I don't really like, the topics they have. It's not as developed as I want it to be. And so you might try another one. And you can do all those for free without ever having to pay a cent, which is better than most people out there, frankly. Because it can be very hard to pick something that you like. There are other features and tutorials and curriculum. There are so many different things available in the Student Developer Pack, including access to code spaces where maybe your laptop is very lightweight and can't do everything that you want it to do, so you might use code spaces to do your coding. Or maybe you want to become a campus expert or find the campus expert in your community. And these can be very useful if you're wanting to say like, what clubs are there? What hackathons are there that you could participate in that you're not necessarily finding as easily as you might particularly online, especially if you're, a remote student or you are far from your campus. It can be very hard to network with the community, and campus experts often make ways for that to happen, and depending on the community needs. So I recommend that you go ahead and sign up for the Student Developer Pack. And I'm trying to type the link for y'all, so that way you can go ahead and start signing up. Now, I know that it will not be eligible. You won't get it done in the course of this workshop, but I do want to encourage you to sign up for it if you don't have it already. And if you are participating in our featured challenges, this is usually one of our featured challenges, and so it can be like just submitting the application, I believe, is enough to confirm that you have done the challenge. Okay, so I've yapped enough about the Student Developer Pack. Let's actually talk about why even use Git. What even is Git? How does it work? And this is actually one of the things I enjoy the most about Git, is how once you get familiar with the process, like, it makes sense. But it takes a couple times to realize what's going on. And so if you've come to this workshop before, you've probably heard a variety of these explanations from me or from other coaches, being that, like, there is a process to how it works and how you integrate with it, how you interact with it. So you start with your working directory, which, if you're not familiar with this terminology, your directory is going to be your folder. It's a very fancy word for folder. And if you're familiar with Linux, Unix, Mac, etc., directories is typically how they're referred to, folders. The thing that makes a GitHub project or your local instance of something, the thing that makes it a repository or a project folder, the thing that makes it Git enabled is Git itself. And so a normal folder of, let's say, photos is just a folder of photos. If you're doing development work in a folder, it's still technically a folder, but it can also be, once you've enabled Git, your project repository or your working directory on your laptop, on your desktop, on your iPad, wherever you do your development. Wherever you do your development, locally stored on your laptop, no internet required, is going to be your local repository, as long as it's Git enabled, and your working directory. And that's where you're actively doing stuff. Now, when you've made those changes, so think again to that video game example. Let's say you were right before the boss room, you can only choose 2 of 3 inventory types to save. You have to pick those 2. Now, normally you can obviously, of course, save everything, and you should choose 2, of course, unless you are playing a hard mode that requires that. You can choose what you'd like to save. So let's say you're working on a feature and you're like, all right, I have one part working, but I'm still working on the other part, but my team member needs something. So you might say, okay, let me save the working part and give my teammate access to that. And the way that you would do that is obviously version control and collaboration and whatnot. But in your local repository where you have said, hey, I have a feature part that works that my teammate needs access to, I'm going to bundle it up and move it to my staging area to say, hey, this is going to be something I'm saving, but I'm maybe actively adding stuff to be saved to it. And then once you bundle it up, you're going to wrap a message around it that says what it is. And that message should be short, concise, but pretty clear about what's going on. So that way, future you in 6 months is like, bug fixed. What bug? You don't want to have that conversation with yourself or your team if you are going into full-time or an internship. Instead, you might say, bug from issue number, blah, 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 resolved by importing correct library, whatever it is. But you can even make it shorter than that. Usually there's going to be like a solution in the issues page or something. But like, let's say it's a feature. There might be a feature number for that or an issue number for that. And that's like in the higher realm of like optimal development and tracking changes. But for you and for your purposes, there are most people who are like fixed X. And it's like, what does that mean? And so you have to be, again, descriptive for your future self. So that way folks know what commits maybe they want to cherry pick. So they want to pick specific things, right? So after you've staged things to your repo and you've wrapped it in a commit message, now you need to actually say, okay, now we're going to do the control S part or the, file, edit save part. Until you actually say, we've bundled a commit and we said, yes, this is now a bundle that we want to send to our teammate, you now have to push it to the cloud. And I'm saying push because you're pushing it away from you. But the way that I visualize it is that you're pushing up to the cloud because we know it's remote. And your teammate will then pull down those changes, that little bundle that you came together with. And so you're seeing I'm using a lot of these words in this diagram to describe these things. And if you're not familiar with these words, that's okay. We're going to repeat it a lot. If you watch other workshops, I repeat it a lot then as well, because I want you to get familiar with the language of using Git. By using this language, you'll now be able to understand the process of what you're doing, and other programmers will also be able to understand. Maybe if you get stuck somewhere, like you tried to commit something or you tried to rebase, that they'll be able to go, okay, I know you're in this realm of the stage or this specific stage, and here's the here's the flow chart of how to fix things, right? So to roll through it again, we have a repository, which is our project folder. You have your own working copy or snapshot. And so everybody has different terminologies. I like to think of it as a timeline where every time you make a commit or you bundle those changes, it's going to be a snapshot. It's going to be a picture of your code at that time, but not a complete picture. And we'll talk about that later and what that looks like. Then, as you make changes, you're adding your revisions to the staging area and you're saying, hey, I'm saving specific files so that way I can bundle them up in a giant message or in a short message, and sending it to my teammate. And so that's where you commit those changes. But the thing is, again, others have no access to what you've committed until you've pushed your changes up to your remote repo. Your remote repo is going to be the GitHub instance in the cloud. So you've told GitHub, hey, I have stuff, like here it is. And your teammate or you might fetch your changes or pull your changes down, which git pull is a combination of fetching and saying, hey, are there any changes? Yeah, okay. And then you say, okay, there are active changes, but I'm not ready to merge them yet. So once you git fetch and merge using git pull, then it will actually pull those changes into your repository and you'll actually see them instead of just knowing, hey, there's changes waiting that I need to integrate. Of course, there are always going to be the occasional conflicts depending on some circumstances, which we'll talk about later. They're not that scary, but the first few months that you run into them can be kind of intimidating. And so we'll talk a little bit about that if we have time later. Okay. And we are pretty much done with the overview of the process. Now let's actually do stuff. Let me go ahead and check on folks. No questions I can answer right now, unfortunately. Okay, so getting Git, if you don't already have Git, I'm actually going to send all these links at once. So that way you all can copy as you need. It is, I'm of the school of thought that is, you should type out the things that you are practicing. But I also recognize some of these commands are quite long, and you might prefer to copy paste instead. So I tried to send them as multiple links, and unfortunately, you're going to have to use the slide to divvy up what command is what, because that was a mistake. I'm sorry. So the first link, mlh.link/git is going to get you all the installation things and instructions you'll need to download the correct Git for your OS. And if you are using Windows, use Wingit. If you're using Mac, use brew install. If you're using Mac OS or Unix, you already have Git on your laptop or desktop or whatever your platform is. Okay, so there are many places to access Git. When you're using Windows, which sometimes I will do this workshop on Windows. Lately, I've been doing it on Mac just because it's easier to set the windows up very quickly. You will want to use, I prefer to use Git bash just like the slides recommend actually. For Windows, I actually use Git bash for more than just Git stuff. I'll use it for a couple Linux commands because it's easier for me to navigate through my file system and a couple other things. But as you'll see from Mac, we're using the built-in terminal. I actually use iTerm nowadays, but there are many other different places that you can use terminal. There are custom terminals that you might use. As you continue your developer journey, there are different terminals you might prefer. And then to really confirm that you have the correct instance, just type git version into your CLI. Our goal is to make sure that it just says, hey, it's a specific version and not that it can't find the command. I'm leaving it up for folks to go ahead and do the installation. I'm also going to set up my terminal instance so that way we are ready to see terminal. Okay. I'm also setting up a tab for later. Let me also make sure that I have deleted the repository I need set up. And again, I'm giving folks that time to do installation stuff. Yeah, I need to delete this repository. Need my authentication, of course. All right. By this point, you have started the installation process. So we're going to go ahead and keep going. And again, you can always watch this as a recording later, or you can hit pause if you're watching this as a recording. It's just that live, we do have to take some time. So new commands that I'm going to go ahead and post in your chat window is to git clone. And we are only using this as a test, okay? I'm going to have you run in your terminal. And so I actually wait before you run that. Let me switch screens really quick. I want to show you something important. Share screen, window. Okay. And then let me add a stage. Okay. So you're currently seeing my terminal. I ran git version. We confirmed that I have an Apple version. And what I really want is to walk you through navigating your folder structure before you run git clone. And I'll show you how I run git clone. Again, my goal is to show you how to use terminal without being scared of it. If I use pwd, this is print working directory. And this will just show the current path that I'm using. So it's /users/io, right? But I want to go to the repositories folder that I have, where I know that I put all of my GitHub repositories, just because that's how I ended up organizing my laptop. And I want to change directory cd to that folder or that directory. So you'll notice that I didn't fully type out repositories. It didn't sound like it if you're hearing the key clack from my mic. You'll notice that I used tab to autocomplete, and I've changed directory, and I'm going to use ls-al, and you can see like I have a ton of different folders, and they all have like interesting colors, whatever. That's just the folder color that I have for me, right? Let me also make sure I don't have. Yeah, I don't have. I at least deleted that one. So this is a way that I would see what's in a folder if I'm like, I don't want to open the folder app and like see what's in there. Now I'm going to go clone that test really quick that I mentioned. So I'm going to type git clone, and I pasted it, and I have a duplicate of git clone, so I didn't need to actually type that. But I hit paste. I'm going to go ahead and clone that because for me, Git is installed correctly and works. And so you'll see, oh, okay, it cloned into intro to Git. It counted the objects, made sure it was matching, compressed everything, and now I got everything. So if I wanted to see or immediately go into my project folder that I've downloaded, I would change directory into intro to Git, and now it auto-completes. And I would once again ls-al to see what's in it. You'll also see that now that line changed. We went from repositories with just nothing after it to intro to Git because we changed folder, plus this Git main stuff that's in different colors. When you have enabled Git in a project folder or in a repository to turn it into a repository, you'll notice that you're going to start seeing things which is like, hey, Git, you're on this branch called main. And we'll talk about branches later. You'll almost always be on main. When you first create Git and you set everything up, eventually you might realize that you want to be on a dev branch instead, and main is going to be your working branch. The thing that actually, like when you run things, it will work. Okay, so we're going to cd ... When you change directory ... you're saying go up one folder, go back one. And we do want to do this because we don't actually want to use that intro to Git folder. That was just to confirm, yes, Git works and is authenticated. If, however, it does not work because it says you need to authenticate, then we need to do something different. Let's go ahead and hide that. Share screen, window, and add that. Okay, so let's say it's saying you need to authenticate. It's because you need to install the GitHub CLI. And so if you're on Windows, you're going to get winget. If you are on Mac, you're going to say brew. Brew is something you may need to install if you don't already have brew. It just enables you to access even more tools. And for both of them, either through Git Bash or your terminal of choice, you're going to run ghauth login. So that way you can actually log in and make sure that you're good to go. And so these might be the missing pieces as to why that Git clone did not work. I'm gonna give you guys give you all a couple, probably like a minute or two to go ahead and run those commands. And I will, in the meantime, set up for our next tutorial bit. I just need to make sure I did them. It didn't work. Okay, that is set up. All right, so you've had a minute or two. I'm gonna go ahead and move on. Again, you can always watch this recording later, walk through the steps one by one, problem solve as you need, totally fine. We're gonna now create our own brand new local Git repo. So if you are currently in the folder where you cloned that intro to Git, get out of that folder. We don't need it. We're not working with it. If you work with that, you're going to mess up how we continue on with the tutorial. So remember to leave so you've changed directory into the repository, just see what it is, listing what the files are, maybe playing with it. If you are currently in that folder, jump out. Remember, cd space ... Those two dots are basically saying like, hey, go back one. We need to go up a folder. So I'm going to show you the slides that I'm using, and then I'm going to walk you through it so that way we can speed run a couple things. So we're going to create a local Git repo. I'm going to talk to you about the terminal lines to do so. We're going to use make directory, mkdir, and we're going to name it my first repo. Then you're going to navigate into it using cd, change directory. And then we're going to initialize Git in that directory using git init. Then we're going to add some files. I'll show you a couple different ways to make files. Everyone has some preferences about things, but I actually want to make sure that you do not become a statistic, and I'll tell you more about that. And then we're going to make a commit. And I'm going to walk you through and purposely force an error where we will not be able to push our changes because we haven't linked something. So we're going to connect to GitHub as our next time that we come back to this window. All right, so I've speed run that. Again, you can always pause, but I'm going to walk you through those terminal commands that I just mentioned. It is so slow to do this on my laptop. I only have one screen. Okay, so you are seeing my terminal. Like I said, we're going to first make a new repository, but that starts by making a new folder. So remember, mk make dir directory. I'm going to name it intro to Git, intro-to-git, hit enter. Now, it doesn't give us any message that says like, you didn't make it, it's not successful. The best way to basically confirm that is cd space type intro, tab complete. Look, it's right there. It means it was successful. So we're going to go ahead and cd into it. And I want to show you before and after. So I said ls-al. Remember, there's dot and dot dot. Dot dot I told you goes up one folder. So dot just keeps you in the same folder. If you ever need to do something that's within the same folder, just use dot. And sometimes you'll see it like, you're doing this within a folder. Make sure you're in this correct folder and use dot. That just says like within this current folder or within this specific space. Now we're going to say git init, and it says, okay, we initialized a Git repository in intro to Git, and we have a new .git folder. So I'm going to run ls-al again to show you, hey, now we have this new folder, this new .git. And if you go through your folder system, like through your UI, you'll find that you actually don't see this specific folder. And you also notice, hey, we have that main thing back again. We went from not having it in this folder to now having Git enabled, which means we now have a repository. Okay, so now let's talk about files. Normally in a Git repository, you'll see a README, readme.md. That stands for Markdown. README is going to tell you how to install your project, run your project, make changes, edits, contributions, etc. For our purposes, it's just going to be a file that we just say hello in as a hello world. There are different ways to write this file. I'm going to show you a couple different ways. So you can say going to copy this and I'm going to paste it in chat for everybody. So there's this way, echo, and then there's some quotations mark there, my first repository, and it's piping this into the readme.md. And you notice that when I said list all my files, there was no readme.md originally. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And let's see. Let's run ls-al again. And so this little X is just saying, hey, there's some changes here, I think. I actually haven't seen this one. I think this is a new update. But now we have readme.md. And if I want to see the contents and make sure that the contents are correct, I would say cat. Type in readme, tab autocomplete, and it's going to print out my first repository. Cool. So that's one way to write a file. Let me remove this really quick because I want to show you the other way, so that way you don't become a statistic. I really love using Vim. I hate using Echo to pipe things because what if I have a lot to write, you know? What if I am like, I am fully ready to sit down and knock out a whole README file, make it look great, whatever. I'm going to actually touch. Let me also show you, I deleted it. What's the show? README is gone. I used rm, remove, and then the specific file I wanted to use. Do not use star if you don't know how to use it. Star says delete everything. Do not use star if you do not know how to use it. Great power, great responsibility, blah, blah, blah. Just, I don't want people deleting their file systems. Do not use the internet suggestions when they're like, oh yeah, remove -r dash blah, blah, blah. Know what you are doing when you use the remove command. Okay, warnings aside. So I'm going to show you a different way to create this file. So I'm going to say touch readme.md. And notice I can't autocomplete because this file doesn't exist. So we're going to do, okay, does the file exist now? Yes. But you'll see this like set of numbers here, this 22, 288, this is the size of the folder or the file. And right now it says this file has nothing in it, which means it's 0. As expected, when we touch a file that does not exist, we are creating a brand new one. Now, I like using Vim. So I'm going to type VI. Yours might be VI or VIM. I think I end up using just VI because I forget to type the M. But it works mostly the same. You can make adjustments and like things to make your life easier. VI, and I'm going to tab autocomplete that new file we just made. And now it's giving me the file name on the bottom, however many lines there are and how much space it is. And it's got this like cursor here and a bunch of tildes, right? I'm going to type I, and now it changed on the bottom to say insert. This means I can now type things. If you're on a Mac, you can kind of still type things anyway. It's a weird broken thing about Vim that I kind of hate about Mac, but it's fine. If I hit escape, that insertion thing disappears. There are times when you are writing git commits, you will end up in Vim. Some people prefer to use Nano. There are many other various like internal text editors on your terminal that I'm sure are out there. I just like Vim. That's just my preference. The reason I don't want you to be a statistic is because the most commonly asked question on Stack Overflow is how do I exit Vim? Because you will end up there. So I'm going to show you. So we're going to insert. I hit I. There are 2 ways to insert, but I'm only going to tell you the I one because it's okay. You can learn it later if you want to. But the point is I is insert. We're going to type that my first readme. Again, we're going to hit escape. And notice that insertion command is gone. Shift to get colon. So shift semicolon gives you colon. So type colon. We're going to type W for write, Q for quit. If you ever need to use specific privileges, exclamation point for admin privileges. So that might be if you're using sudo to edit stuff. Sometimes it's like, you can't edit this. You don't have permission. Sometimes you might need an exclamation point. So again, colon, write, W, quit, Q. Hit enter. Just to see what's in it. Cat, readme, voila, my first readme. Okay, we have exited Vim. You now know how to exit Vim. You are no longer a statistic. You will not go Google how to exit Vim. You will not be a statistic on Stack Overflow posting the question, how do I exit Vim? Okay, and I'll tell you why you need to know this because we will run into it shortly. So we're going to git status because we want to see what's going on. Git status tells us on the bottom here there's an untracked file called readme.md. And it's going to say, hey, git add your file name to include what you want to commit. So remember, we want to bundle it in a message before we push it. Nothing is added to commit, but there are untracked files present. And so if you want to track files when they make changes, that's things like, hey, I've made a brand new file. Yes, I want to include this in my Git. Or maybe you made an environment file. You do not want to track that. Things that you are going to eventually add to Git, you want to track. Do not track things you do not want to add. I know, converse statement. Git add readme. tab autocomplete, git status, voila. Now it says, hey, you've got a new file that you created. We are on branch main, there are no commits, but we have some changes we could commit. If you ever want to remove this, let's say you do this, which I tell you don't do that. Do not use git dot or git add dot or git add star. Always manually add your files because it gives you more control. It makes you a better programmer. It also means you're going to have less mistakes. I totally get it. You're like, oh, but there's like 50 files. Like, git add folder /star because you know what's in that folder, unless, or maybe you might say, oh, I only want to add HTML files. So star is going to be your wildcard. Be very careful how you use it. Practice how you use it. Anyway, so we've git added, we've git status. We now see there's a change. We're going to go write git commit. If you do not write -m, you will enter vim. Write -m. Just in case you forget -m, you now know how to exit vim. -m means message. We're going to add a custom message. And this is where I said, remember, be concise, be clear, be kind to your 6 months future self. Unless you have an eidetic memory, I'm sure you'll remember everything. I do not. I do not remember what 6 months ago me was. I do not remember what 6 days ago me was. I don't even remember what I had for breakfast tomorrow. And I eat mostly the same breakfast every day. The point is, be kind to yourself. Be kind to your teammates. Be kind to your collaborators. You might say, added README, because this is fairly standard. Maybe you might say created README. That also works. Created README for a brand new project or to start project. Or most people for their first commit will actually write initial commit because it's all the setup stuff. And people know initial commit is usually setup. But if it's not setup, don't write initial commit. Write what's going on. Okay, so I've closed the quotations and I'm going to hit enter. And it's going to say, hey, you have created README. There's a file changed and an insertion that we've made. If we had changed things like now, let's say we make another change to the README file and we delete some text, it will say, deletion. Or if we add some text, it'll say more insertions. And it's by line, the amount of insertions. And so it's created this little like message for me. So we're going to go get status again. And now it says, hey, you're on branch main. There's nothing to commit. Your working tree is clean. But that's not entirely correct. What it does is said, hey, we've cleaned up all of our pending things. We know it's bundled in a commit, but we haven't actually pushed it. At no point did we write git push. So let's do it. Git push. Okay. Now it says, hey, we have an error. No configured push destination. Of course, we haven't linked everything up. This is on purpose. Either specify the URL from the command line or configure a remote repository, and then you can use push. So we need to go set that stuff up. So remember how I said we need to go create a GitHub repository? We're going to do that now. If you don't own a GitHub account, now's the time to make one. Although I guess you should have made it if you were authenticating with GitHub. So you should have had an account. So let's switch over. Need to stop sharing that window. Move that tab over. Bum, bum, bum. Bum, 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 bum. Share window. Add to screen. Okay. So we have my GitHub. I am signed in. I am looking at my repositories page. I'm going to go here to this green button where it says new. And we're going to create a brand new repository. Now, there are other ways. You can also go here to this plus button up here and say new repository. There are 20 billion different ways that you can create a new repository. It's kind of impressive. I'm going to choose myself as my owner because I'm on way too many freaking projects. But you might only be on one, and so it will auto-complete your name for you. We're going to name this my first repo because that's what we named the project name. Fun fact, you don't actually have to keep it the same project name, but that's the problem for future you. I'll let you figure that out. We're going to make no changes here. No description, no change to the visibility, no template, no adding the README. We already created one, and we're not going to jumpstart our project with Copilot. And we're going to go hit create. Okay. And the reason I want you to create a basically empty repository is because I wanted you to see this quick setup. It only exists. This page only exists when you create a completely empty repository, which if you start your project locally on your laptop, desktop, whatever it is, always, always, always create an empty repository. You don't want to deal with headless changes. It's not worth it. Always create an empty repository. So we've set it all up, and we actually realized we did most of the instructions. We said, hey, echo things to the README. git init, git add readme, git commit. We haven't done these last three. So if we wanted to do it like that, where we create the new repository first, this would be our how-to. If you ever need to go back to those instructions, this is your how-to. But we can actually just use this. The order doesn't completely matter, to be honest. It's okay. But we're going to follow these commands, which is push an existing repository from the command line, which is exactly what we've done. We've created our own local repository, existing repository, because we initialized there. And we're going to use command line to connect it to our GitHub repository. So for you, it will be github.com/your username and then myfirstrepo.git. So you can just copy that and paste it. Again, I'm of the school of thought that you should type everything out that you're using, but it does mean that you're going to have a higher likelihood of typos. There's the other school of thought, which is just paste it, read it, and do it often enough that you will, know it. So I like typing it personally. That's just my preference. But we are running out of time, so I will not be typing it, sadly. It kind of makes me sad, but it is what it is. So I'm not going to show you this bit. I'm going to go ahead and run those commands because I want to walk us through the next few things. We have connected to GitHub through terminal, and I will show you what it looks like. I want to walk you through branching because we saw that command git branch, right? Specifically, it was like saying git branch main and some other stuff. What even is a branch? Again, I think about Git and GitHub in terms of it being a tree or a timeline where each commit is a thing that builds up the main trunk. But commits can be made on more than one branch. Let's say you are working on a team and you're both sharing the same main branch until one of you says, hey, I want to really try out and see if this feature might work, but I don't want to ruin what we're doing. So I'm going to branch, do my own thing, and then merge back in. And hopefully by then it will work. And if it doesn't work, we'll drop it, right? So branching, as you can see in this instance for the slideshow, you have script.js, which is just counting stuff. And then you can create a new branch that does something different. And then you will review that usually. Maybe like you'll look at the code. This is part of the code review. This is how you deal with pull requests and issues. And you will merge it back in once you've confirmed, yes, this is good code. So to do that, we don't actually have time to do this exercise, but I want to encourage you that with a friend or with someone that you meet online, that you both might create branches and try this exercise out, because we're going to do something on purpose. So you're going to form a group of two, choose one of your intro to Git repositories to use. And so that for that repository that you select, make sure that your partner has access to that repository and that they have cloned the repository. If you are the one who your repository was not selected, make sure you have access, make sure you can clone, blah, blah, blah. Next, we're going to make changes. And I'm going to show you what those changes are going to be like and what they'll create. We are doing this on purpose. You are going to fail on purpose. Again, as you can see, stop. Receiving an error here is intentional. So you're both going to make changes to the file. Make sure that you change the same line. So you will add things to the next line using the echo, and your partner will add things to their line, again, second line. So you're both working on the second line, which like logically, by this point, you might go, hey, wait a second. If we're editing the same line, what happens? An error, we're getting there. Then you go ahead and practice adding your files. Do not use git add dot. Do not use git add dot. Do not use git add dot. Use git add readme.md. Specify the file that you have edited, please. Commit, make sure you use -m so you don't end up in Vim, and then push your changes. Because remember, we've already adjusted those branches, set everything up, everything's connected. I'll show you in a moment. So you have merge conflicts. This is what's going to happen as a result of this activity. What happens when you edit the same lines of a file at the same time by a different user, right? And by same time, I mean same change vicinity, which is not probably the easiest way to understand that. So I'll workshop that. So visually what's going on, let's go ahead and skip here. So first we have Jay's fruit list, mango, apple, banana, 1, 2, 3. Lisa makes a change fruit branch, and she's like, actually, Lisa's fruit list is going to be pineapple, orange, banana. And at the same time, Jay's like, wait, I got to update this. And so Jay makes another commit where it's watermelon, apple, banana. If we were to do a diff or a compare the differences between these two changes, the green here and the blue here on the bottom, we need to first compare the changes from the first commit to the first green commit to the second green commit. So the diff between these two J's fruit list, line 0, doesn't change, or line 1 if you decide to index by 1. Line 1, actually, 1.mango, changes to 1.watermelon. Okay, so that's one change we need to track. 2 is apple, 3 is banana. Those two don't change. So we know that between this commit here on the left and the commit on the right and the top, there's only one change. It's the number 1 fruit. Now let's diff between Lisa and Jay. From line 0, Lisa makes it her fruit list, and Jay keeps it as Jay's fruit list. So now we have another change. We have the change in title. And, hey, wait a second, that change we tracked that was on line 1, where it was watermelon, from mango to watermelon, Lisa wants it to be pineapple. Hold up. Okay, there's a change here that Git doesn't know how to deal with, and this is requiring human intervention. But let's keep going. 2, apple didn't change between the greens, but it did change between the blues. So now we have a third change. And we're okay with this change because only one change happened between the two. And then banana, nothing changed. So we have 3 things we're looking at. Change 1, the title, doesn't matter because between the first 2 greens, no change happened, but between the green and blue, a change did happen, and Git will be like, yeah, I can resolve that. I'll just take the new one. I'll take the new change. Cool. Change 3, right here, change 3 was the orange and apple, which again, apple didn't change, but orange did. Cool, no biggie, we'll resolve that. The last change that we want to care about, because we skipped this for a little bit, was the mango to watermelon to pineapple. Git is going to be like, which one do you want me to use? And this is where it's handed back to humans and you get a merge conflict. So as you can see, the conflict is going to be on that line 1. There are multiple ways to resolve this change. With Visual Studio Code or any other IDE, there's going to be some fancy UI that will basically say, hey, you have some changes coming through. Which ones do you want to keep? You could keep the original, Jay's fruit list and watermelon, or you could keep Lisa's fruit list, which is the incoming change, and the pineapple, or you could keep both. And depending on what the circumstances are, you could choose any one of those options. And all of them would be correct, depending on the circumstances. You just have to pick one. Pick the first, pick the second, or pick both. And if you pick both, you have to do some editing because you need to make sure, like, you wouldn't have 2 1s. You might have 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So you need to make some adjustments. Now, as you can see in Visual Studio Code, there's going to be this like set of options you can use to say, yes, accept the current change, this one, accept the incoming change, Lisa's, or accept both changes, accept both. And then you have to, make your changes and whatnot. So for you to resolve your Git conflicts, you will follow these instructions in your activity where you're both pulling. You're going to want to change your branch settings. You'll open the file and you'll see that you've got these commands, these brackets, and you'll have to remove those markers once you resolve what the conflict is. Do you want to keep your change, your partner's change, or both? And once you've selected, you can just delete these markers, and you have to make sure you delete these markers or else Git will keep telling you there's an issue. Once you've deleted those markers, confirmed your conflict, you can go ahead and add it, add the commit message with a -m saying resolved fruitless conflict or resolved readme conflict, whatever the description thing is, and then git push. Okay, we are pretty much done. I want to show you the terminal output of your last few steps that we did to set up the repository. And as you can see on the bottom, you're seeing git branch. So here's the commands. We added the origin, git branch, git push, and then it said, hey, we're writing stuff. So this is what you're going to see with git push. You're going to see, hey, you've done some stuff here. It's making sure that it sent it correctly. If it doesn't do all of this, sometimes there's going to be an issue. It means that something hasn't completely sent over, but I have 99% of the time always seen something like this. That 1%, I think I have, and I think it was a group project where people just didn't know how to use Git. Anyway, we've set up a new branch, and we just said, hey, main is connected to main. Main branch on GitHub is connected to main branch for me here locally on my laptop, right? And it just says it's set up. If you ever want to make a new branch, there are 2 ways to do it. You can say git branch, and then you give it, I think, the name of your branch. So name here. The way that I usually make branches is because usually I'm like working on something and go, oh, I wasn't supposed to be on main. I need to be on a different branch. Hang on. I will do git checkout -b and then branch name here. And then checkout means that you'll be able to change the branch. So let's say new branch. Okay, it says, hey, you switched to a new branch, and this has changed. Nice. If I ever want to go back, git checkout main, I can go back. So sometimes you might have commits that are on main that are not on new branch. Remember, you are on a tree, and when you branch, you won't have these updates until you come back, or you just switch back over. So you can have multiple things, multiple branches for as many as you need for whatever features you need. And they don't even always have to be merged back in. They should, but if something's a dead end, then it's a dead end. All right, we are done with our workshop. I want to remind folks to go ahead and go to mlh.link/GHW feedback and let me know what you thought, or let at least MLH know what you thought. We always give this workshop every Global Hack Week because there are new folks joining us, but also maybe folks need the refresher or they want to feel a little more comfortable and go beyond that. So again, please go ahead and fill out those feedback forms. And coming up in a couple minutes, I'm going to go ahead and let you go very shortly. You'll have today in Global Hack Week to talk about what's coming up. And I know that you just got a notice that later this week, you'll get a very exciting announcement from Swift and John. So looking forward to it. See you in a future Today in Global Hack Week, and enjoy the rest of your week. See y'all.